Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Darker Than Blue here in Washington, D.C. My name is Jackie Lukeman, and you are listening to Darker Than Blue on WPFW here on 89.3 in Washington, D.C. WPFW, your number one source for a saving. Goodness, there's so much going on. I can't even keep straight what I want to say. WPFW making an impact in the world, one broadcast at a time. And you're listening to Darker Than Blue, your number one source for struggle, socialism, and soul here on WPFW 89.3. Woo! It's a whole lot going on, ladies and gentlemen. I know this week rather, has been chock full of so much stuff. But something happened recently that I really want us to focus on. I do not want us to miss the importance of this struggle because you know me, you all, if you have not figured it out by now, I am all about the struggle for liberation of our people, of African people, of oppressed people, of marginalized people, not just domestically, but internationally. And a part of the struggle that we miss a lot of times is the inability of our ancestors, of our people, to even rest in peace. Literally, we are talking about the respect and the dignity that is denied our ancestors to rest in peace. We say it all the time when someone transitions from this life, rest in peace. But what if they can't? Because capitalism has to take control of, exploit, denigrate, and profit off of everything. And that includes the remains of our ancestors who are still having to struggle for their freedom, even after death. So I'm very happy to be having this conversation today with my guest, Marsha Coleman Adebayo from the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, with some very, very important update and news about this struggle for freedom for our ancestors to rest in peace. Before we get to this conversation, though, of course, I've got to give my disclaimer, folks. Here on Darker Than Blue, the opinions that I express on this show are mine and those of my guests, and may not all the time reflect the opinions or the positions of WPFW or the Pacifica Network. So there, got that little bit of housekeeping out of the way. Welcome, Marsha Coleman Adebayo. I'm so excited. Let me stop talking, Marsha, because this struggle has been going on for a long time to save Moses Cemetery in Bethesda, Maryland.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your show, because people keep asking about, how do we amplify this information? And it's because of radio shows like yours and others that the community really finds out about what's happening to their ancestors, to their family members. And then there are the wider, of course, political issues that we have to deal with that I think are equally as important as the impersonal burial ground issues that we've been talking about. But we've been at this now fighting against Montgomery County and almost every elected official in Montgomery County. And I really think that's important for people to understand, that there is not one single elected official in Montgomery County, dare I say, the state of Maryland, that has that made a decision to denounce desecration of Black people's bodies. Not one. You would think that'd be such an easy political decision to make. Oh yeah, of course I denounce desecration, but it's not that easy because desecration is attached to land.
There it
land
is.
Basis of all wealth. And even where Black people are buried is considered superfluous to capitalism. In other words, when there is when there's a choice between allowing Black people to quote unquote rest in peace, and the need of capital to continue to profit off of the bodies of Black people or the land that they're buried in, until a very recent a Maryland Supreme Court decision, which, has both its pros and cons, but I think to a large extent the pros won in this case. The people who are captains of capital have always made a decision. Why not just dig up the Black bodies? And sometimes they don't dig them up, and put a shopping mall on top of them, or a highway, or whatever, gas station. It doesn't matter, because they're Black people.
Right.
And they have no history, and they had no significance when they were alive. How much more or how much less do they have now since they're dead? So this is how the settler colonial state views Black people. Whether you're alive or whether you're dead, if you're alive, then you're bait for the mass incarceration system in which your life is stolen, sometimes at very early ages, and you're just locked away to increase the wealth of those private industrial complex imprisoned industry capitalists. And when you're dead, of course, well, if you didn't have any worth when you were alive, then of course when you're dead you have even less worth. So that's the reason why we have to constantly connect the status of Black people, whether they're alive or whether they're dead, because from the settler colonial perspective, we are insignificant unless we are making profit to keep the machine going.
And the fight to keep property developers from bulldozing, digging up, and desecrating a cemetery, an African burial ground in particular, is a part of that continued struggle for freedom, for liberty from the capitalist system, because that's what this liberation struggle really is about, right? It's not just liberation from a particular thing. It's liberation from this entire capitalist system, and it is liberation of Black and oppressed bodies from cradle to grave, to not be exploited in this system the way we are from cradle to grave. Before we get to the Maryland Supreme Court decision, I want to ask you about what you said about the Maryland public officials who did not get on board with denouncing the desecration of burial remains. What did Maryland public officials say? Like, particularly people, did Wes Moore say anything? Did Larry Hogan say anything? What about Mark Ehrlich? What did these people say?
Yeah, it's a really great question. As I said before, we have not found one elected official, and these are people that Black people give their votes to. We have not, and progressives, we have not found one. So whether you're talking about Mark Ehrlich, who is the county executive, who has been one of the most staunch defenders of private property, and one of our, I think, most fierce opponents, quite frankly, in the Black cemetery struggle.
Wow.
There's no question about it. He has made the most demeaning and, I think, racist comments that you can imagine. In fact, on one part of the cemetery, they found over 200 or 400 bones of our people. And these, we'll talk about the different parts of the cemetery, but there's a part of the cemetery that they don't even call the cemetery Moses Cemetery. They use parcels, because after the Ku Klux Klan, in collusion with Montgomery County, decided to steal the land from our people, who literally still had blood coming out of their backs from slavery, and who had somehow saved up enough money to buy land so that their children would not have to endure the kind of indignities they were dealt. These same people were buried, as you know, in our tradition. A lot of these people were buried by their homes or a favorite tree, or wherever they were buried. And so as they started excavating this part of the cemetery, which we now have filed a lawsuit against the developer 2 weeks ago, they started finding all these bones, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bones. And so I wrote, and other people wrote to Mark Elrich saying, you got to stop the desecration. You got to stop the excavation because they're finding bones. Well, Mark had also written to Sam Collins, who writes for the Washington Informer, and told Sam, yes, they are finding bones. So he knew that they were finding bones. But what was his analysis? They must have been chicken bones.
He said, what?
Oh, yeah, they must have been chicken bones. No, or pig bones.
No.
Oh, yes. So yeah, don't have a heart attack because it gets a lot worse, sis. I mean, these politicians have made every excuse for the colonial experiment that you can imagine. Now, in reality, we have filed a lawsuit against the developer, and we're demanding the return of those bones because not only did they find bones that were so close to what they considered human bones, they took them to a professor at Towson State University who had written a book called Never Suck a Dead Man's Hand. Now, that's the kind of people they find when they want to make sure that they're going to get the results that they paid for. And so this professor, her name is Dana Coleman, she writes a memo saying, and she has an expertise in being able to determine even the smallest fragment of a human bone. And she's done all kinds of work in Serbia and other war-torn areas. And she writes back to the developer, which, we had a very brilliant young lady who did an extensive Maryland Public Information Act, which is a FOIA, so that we can find out what the communication is between these public officials. And this professor at Towson University writes back and she says, with all of my expertise, I cannot rule out that these are human beings. Now, you would have thought anyone with even an ounce of humanity would have said, wow, we got to stop right now because we have encroached upon a human burial ground.
Right.
They write to Dr. Michael Blakey, the scientific director of the New York Burial Ground Project. Michael Blakey unequivocally says, you got to stop the excavation. You have possibly encroached upon a human burial ground. You must contact the descendant community. You must contact the archaeological community, the whole 10 yards. You must act like these people mattered. You must act like they were human beings. What does Mark Elrich and these guys do? Oh, these are just pig and chicken bones. So there is no problem. The permit continues. So you asked me, who are some of these people? Mark Elrich is clearly one. I almost lose my ability to speak English when I talk about him.
Yeah. Understandable.
Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Oh,
has absolutely refused to intervene in any meaningful way whatsoever. In fact, we actually demonstrated at his last birthday party. We will be at his next birthday party if he decides to make it public, because now he's just ignoring our letters. He's refusing to meet with us, but it's going to be interesting to see how he refuses the Maryland Supreme Court decision, because his position is, I don't want to go up against maybe the Montgomery County, power structure or whatever. Now, what people have to understand is that Moses Cemetery is located in Jamie Raskin's district.
There we go. It's
located in his district. And he at one point, because we were going to his office and protesting outside of his office and waving the Juneteenth flag and doing meeting him at his press conferences, he eventually, issued a very pathetic and just useless statement that he is opposed to desecration. He's opposed to human beings not being treated properly. What he doesn't tell you in this letter is that Moses is actually located in his district. And he never once in this pathetic statement that he issued even mentioned the name Moses African Cemetery. It's just, and then he talks about the members of the Black Caucus who have introduced bills like Congresswoman Adams, and how he supports that. Well, we didn't even support her bill. So we understand why why he decided to reference her bill. So we are now going to go back to Congressman Raskin, and we're going to ask him, what percentage of the Black population voted for you? And why should they continue to vote for you if you cannot even make a statement opposing the desecration of their family members? I mean, just think that Black people have to start operating in their own interests. And when you see white politicians who refuse to even acknowledge your humanity, why in the world are we voting for them? If you see his weekly, he's got a weekly Raskin, circular that comes out to his constituents. Mm-hmm. And it comes out like on a regular basis, like every week, every 2 weeks. Not one time has he mentioned Moses African Cemetery, the largest desecration that's occurring in the United States. He has not mentioned it one time in 3 years, not one time. Not one time. So, so we're calling out these politicians. Wes Moore, we've written to Wes Moore. He's got these really beautiful sounding historic statements about, how he's the son of this and how, he stands on the shoulders of Black people and all of that. And so we kept trying to reach out to him, make a statement, denounce the desecration. Not a peep, not a peep. And then he had one of his, a political, one of his staff people call me after we demonstrated against him at a mansion in Potomac. And basically she was so arrogant and she was so difficult to even have a conversation with, that I ended the conversation within like maybe 40 minutes, because it was like, do you know who you're demonstrating against? Do you understand? It was like, wait a minute, lady. It's not who we're demonstrating against, it's who we're fighting for. Mm-hmm. We're fighting for our people. Mm-hmm. And if the governor doesn't understand that, then Black people have to understand what side of history he stands on. So when I say that not a single elected official, I'm calling out names. Yes. Not one of these people, not one, has had the courage to go up against developers, because they're too terrified that these people will run candidates against them, and they have the money to do it. They have the money to do it. So the question is, where do you stand? Where are your moral values? Do you believe in people power? Do you believe that people can come together and we can defeat developers? Well, that's what BACC is showing. And and I think you heard the other night in a video that our organization, the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, we have run 3 multinational developers out of Bethesda, Maryland. 3 of them. And every single time we've done it, people have said, oh, you can't. They're too big. They're too powerful. No, they're not. Because we are more powerful. Much more powerful than they are. And that is what we've been showing in Bethesda, Maryland.
And I love that you said that, Marcia, because when we're looking at the struggle of African people in particular, against settler colonialism and settler colonialism here and in other places, but colonialism and neocolonialism, particularly like on the continent, I'm thinking of the Sahel states and the alliance they have. And I cannot tell you how many people have said to me, as a member of BAP, the Black Alliance for Peace, in our campaign to shut down AFRICOM, how many people said, how are y'all going to shut down AFRICOM? It's too big. You're not going to be able to do that, blah, blah, blah. What have they done in the Sahel states but demanded that AFRICOM leave?
Right,
after
exactly.
they kicked the French out. And yes,
Africa
they went,
and France. I
yes,
mean,
and
that was
yes, they went
sucking
somewhere
the
else.
blood out of these countries.
Yeah, yeah, and yes, they went somewhere else, but it is our job in the beating heart of the empire to chase after them and
Right,
to raise the awareness of our people here about
right,
what our people there are struggling against that our tax dollars pay for. And
right.
similarly, in this fight for Moses Cemetery, you've been faced with the same kind of attitude and responses. How can you fight these developers? They're too big. You're not powerful enough. And every time, domestically and internationally, all throughout history, Marcia, we have shown over and over again that the people really do have the power to defeat every enemy that stands in our way. But
That's the reason
but we
why
must be
Black history,
organized to do it.
exactly. You have to be organized to do it. And that's the power and the threat of understanding our history, which is the reason um, why these people connected so intricately to capitalism and to this system that denies humanity must always try to crush these kinds of movements because they're always trying to advocate and force people to believe that that they're more powerful than they are. That is the story of Moses, isn't it? I
Mm.
mean, you have on River Road people who were kidnapped, who come to the United States, who face the most vile, violent, barbaric system that the world has ever known. Not for 1 year, not for 10 years, not for 20 years, but for centuries, for centuries. And then they fight for their liberation. And one of the things that I love that we did during Juneteenth, we had Black enactors, Black military enactors, who were talking about the role of the US colored troops,
Mm.
who made the statement, we don't need anyone to fight for us. We will fight for ourselves and we will liberate our own communities. All we need is the gun. All we need is the gun. Give
Mhm.
us the gun and we will liberate ourselves. And what did they do? Now, even Abraham Lincoln wanted to take a picture with Harriet Tubman because he was trying to be, he wanted the title of the great liberator. And what did Harriet Tubman say? No, I'm not coming to Washington to take a picture with you because you didn't liberate us. We liberated ourselves.
Wait, are you trying to say that Abraham Lincoln was the first attempted influencer?
The story just keeps repeating itself from one generation to another generation, right? And she said, "No, you're not getting a picture next to me. I'm sorry. First of all, I'm too pretty to stand." But no, 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 no. But I'm saying, we do not understand the role we have played. And then, of course, when that story played out, then it was the abolitionists who liberated us. It was everybody except our own agency that liberated us. So if it was so important for the abolitionists and, you know, um, Abraham Lincoln, why were these people sleeping with guns under their pillows?
Mm, mm,
Why were they massacring people in public in
mhm,
order to intimidate whole communities? And guess what? That didn't even work.
mhm,
That didn't even work. So our history, so one of the reasons, so it's a political decision to erase our history.
mhm,
It's a political decision because they do not want people to understand how powerful we are. And that's what they're trying to do at Moses Cemetery, because you only have to spend a few minutes reading one of our books on Moses to understand how powerful this community was. I mean, when you think about that whole River Road corridor, which was after 1807, after they started closing down some of the channels that they were kidnapping Africans um, from various parts to this part to Maryland. And you realize that they realize, oh my God, we're going to have a shortfall of labor. So what we need to do is to start creating our own labor force by
mhm.
using African girls,
Yep.
right? River Road was one of those corridors. So they were forcing little girls into pregnancy. They were raping them into pregnancy so that they could produce these children. This is one of the quarters in which that happened. 60% of those little children died in childbirth.
Oh my.
So great for them. I don't, they want to talk about Sally Heming and Jefferson, this little 13-year-old child who's being raped by a 60-year-old man with wooden teeth. Want to make a romance story out of it. And this is just a 13-year-old child who's being impregnated by this man. And so this is happening on River Road. And these children are dying. And in fact, now we've actually uncovered history where they started renting out little Black girls at 4 years old for gentlemen's parties. 4 years old. I mean, these are just pedophiles. And so, but those little 4-year-olds made the decision to live and not die. We know that. We know that because we are in touch with their descendants. We're in touch with their descendants. And there's still even someone that I've got to have a meeting with because I didn't want to tell him that his great-great-great-grandmother was one of those little girls.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
But because she made the decision that she was going to live and not die, I have someone to talk to and share her story with.
That is.
And every day, I'm sure she wished she could die, but she didn't do it. Right, she didn't do it.
That is
and
amazing.
instead, she became a revolutionary. I mean, we know that these little girls were so intent on being a part of the struggle, they would actually braid their hair in the shape of a map that would help people understand exactly how to get to Washington, D.C. at some point. For revolutionary children who were determined that they were going to lead the struggle for liberation. What excuse do we have?
Lord have mercy.
We have? So this is the story we're telling about Moses. It's not just about people resting in peace. This is a revolutionary story of a community that fought back in every single way. They resisted. In fact, in one part of the cemetery, the part that they're now building a self-storage unit on, there was a young man named Private William H. Brown. Now, how did we find Private William H. Brown? I'd love to say that we're great researchers, but you didn't have to be a great researcher to find him. They actually tell the story in one of the Montgomery County documents about Private H. Brown, and they knew that he was buried in that part of the cemetery. All we had to do was look through Montgomery County information and find him.
Wow.
And this is a man who actually fought in the Overland Campaign. He fought in some of the most critical battles of the Civil War. Married 3 Black women, by the way, had almost 10 children. And then he was buried in Moses Cemetery.
Wow.
And they decided to excavate. They found his body. What did they do? They chopped him up, they dismembered him, and they scattered his remains throughout the area. And now there are literally buildings on top of his remains and other remains in Moses Cemetery.
Oof. I have to tell you, Marsha, as many times as we have had you on By Any Means Necessary when we were on Sputnik, and as many times as we have talked since, hearing these stories has never become easier. Do you understand? Abdus and I came out to a couple of the marches in 2022, in 2021. And we were actually there when was it the King of Benin?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Tofa.
Yes. King Tofa the third, I think it was, came.
Yes, that's right.
That actually happened, you all. So for folks who are always talking about the Africans who sold us into slavery and why don't we ever talk about them? All of that. Well, the King of Benin, who is the direct descendant of the King of Benin, who was involved in trading with, I believe it was the Portuguese, for the sale of some African people. And even he, when he understood what people were being taken to, because nobody understood what was being done to the people who were being taken, because
Mhm.
nobody had seen anything like what was being done in
Right.
chattel
Who
slavery.
could imagine what was being done?
Nobody understood. So
No.
even the original king of Benin, when he found out years later what was being done to the people that he allowed, he apologized. He said, "Oh
Mhm.
my God, I did not know
Mhm.
that, and I did not know our people were never going to come back."
Mhm.
They literally did not understand that they
Mhm.
were making a deal with the literal devil
Yeah,
in
yeah.
these, and this was a very small number of African leaders. This was not most of them, wasn't all of them, but people love to talk about that, and I understand it's an important part of it. But the continuation of that is that his descendant, direct descendant, came
Mhm.
to the United States,
To
came
say I'm sorry.
to, yes,
Mhm.
came to Bethesda, Maryland, came
Mhm.
to, is the church called Macedonia?
Macedonia Baptist
Right,
Church.
Macedonia Baptist Church, came to Macedonia Baptist Church on River Road. Abdashid and I took a picture with him and his entourage, and we got tears in our eyes, and we're just, that they came here.
Mhm.
And they understood the scope of how, not only what happened then, but the legacy
Mm.
of it. And he
Right.
spent an extended time with us.
Mhm.
And so this, can we please stop this whole thing with it was the Africans' fault that they didn't
Well, I mean,
understand what they were
it was
getting into either.
European and American boats out there. I mean, it wasn't African boats out there.
Thank you. It was
But
Portuguese, French,
Portuguese,
German,
French,
European, but
Spanish, English, I mean, yeah. And I think what's missing in that discussion, I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, it's a completely different topic. It's an important
yeah.
topic. Is that, I mean, African nations were engaged in a lot of warfare among each other,
Hmm.
which really speaks to the issue of how third parties can come in and take
Mm.
advantage when Black people are fighting among themselves.
Oh, come on. Mhm.
And so essentially, because these various kingdoms were fighting, and then the Europeans see this incredible opportunity, basically to give arms to both sides. And so you've got Portuguese guns shooting at both sides of the divide.
Mhm.
But and then also you had corruption. I mean,
Mhm.
what am I talking about when I talk about Mark Elridge and these other politicians? I'm talking about corruption, right?
Mhm.
And then if you look at, you know, class divisions, you look at the corruption in terms of wealth, and you took a look at class. But what people don't talk about is that the people who were really impacted, forget about the kings and the queens, the people who were really impacted were just everyday moms and dads in
Yeah.
Africa who were
Mhm.
trying to raise their kids and send them to school and make sure they had food on the table. And when I went to visit my husband's family, and my husband's Yoruba, he's from Nigeria.
Mhm.
And when I went to visit his family, his grandmother was almost 100 and something years old when I met her. She died at 105.
Mm. Mhm.
And she was so happy that her grandson had brought home someone who had been taken to America. That
Wow.
in fact, that her grandson had made
Mm.
this decision to mend what had been so broken on just
Oh
on a
my gosh.
micro level. And she told me the story about when they call them two bobs, when these white people were coming and they would get the signal throughout the community that the whites were coming or that the blacks who were working for the whites were coming. And we have a lot of examples we can still use of Black people who are working on behalf of white supremacy.
Well, mhm.
Okay, and so you had the same situation. You got
Mhm.
Black people in that point, at that period of history, also working for white supremacy, and how they would have to pick up everything they owned, their clothes, their cooking utensils, their books, and they'd have to start running to try to stay one step ahead of these people who were trying to kidnap them. Well, that's the stories we don't hear. We hear about the kings and the queens who are selling, but we don't hear about the stories of everyday Black people who were trying to make it, and they had to completely, you know, escape and try to stay one step ahead of these people, and how it completely destroyed, in many instances, the cohesion of the community. And look at the condition of Africa today. It never healed.
Yep. Yep.
How many, we talk about how many people died from, the West and Central, and to some degree eastern part of Africa coming to the United States. But how many people have died in Africa as a result of that kind of European invasion of Africa? During the colonial period, when they brought the guillotine to the French part, they brought the lynching to the west part of Africa. How many people have died from starvation because they refused to work in the fields for European? So, let's begin to add all of this up.
Yeah.
Let's add it all up, right? Not just the United States. Let's add it all up,
right? Right.
And what we will see is that on both sides of the Atlantic, we still have Black people who work on behalf of white supremacy, and we still have the majority of Black people who are still trying to make it, and they're still trying to fight against this evil. So,
yeah, that I see all of the. It's impossible to talk about this story in Bethesda about Moses Cemetery and not talk about the enslavement, but also not talk about everything connected to it. And that includes the people, which makes this an international struggle. Well, this is not just a struggle of, the descendants of American enslaved in Bethesda, Maryland. This is about the impact of the international criminal enterprise of slavery. It was an international criminal enterprise.
It was
multiple countries were involved in and benefited from and continue to benefit from. So this is not a one country, one group of people kind of story. No, this is an international story, and the redress we are owed, it is owed to us from the entire world, the entire European world, not just the United States. So let's just get that clear. But let me really quickly, before we talk about the Supreme Court decision, because it's great that we did all of that and laid the groundwork to really talk about how you all punch these people in the nose. But before we get to that part, I want to make a couple of really quick announcements for some upcoming events. We have a fantastic fundraising event here for WPFW that will be on October 5th. That will be a concert featuring the DMV's best reggae bands and artists, Carl Malcolm Image Band, Curlew Reggae, All-Stars Reggae Band, Lady Flame, also known as The Flame. Music will be provided by DJ Bobby's Music Machine and the Jimmy T Experience. That's October 5th at King Solomon's Lounge, 2245 Rhode Island Avenue Northeast, Washington, D.C. Cover is $40. Proceeds benefit WPFW 89.3 FM. You can purchase tickets at eventbrite.com. But before that, a free political education event will be held on September 11th. At 7 p.m. at the Black Workers and Wellness Center. That event is titled A Pan-African Perspective on the Black Miss Leadership Class. That's September 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's at the Black Workers and Wellness Center, 2500 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, Southeast, Washington, D.C. Food will be provided. You can register for the event for the Zoom link for the event at tinyurl.com/Africans Study, AFRICANSSTUDY. And that is being sponsored by the Black Alliance for Peace Mid-Atlantic and Pan-African Community Action right here in Washington, D.C. So, Marcia, the Supreme Court decision. This is the Maryland Supreme Court that they have made a decision on this fight. Where did the Maryland Supreme Court come down on this fight?
Yeah, before we go there, I've got to tell you that one of the things that I'm so proud about is that my husband is Yoruba man from a small little village in Western Nigeria, southern Western Nigeria. His name actually, he was one of the plaintiffs in this case.
Mm.
First time that an African has now brought a suit against the United States government
What?
on the basis of the kidnapping of Africans from West and Central Africa. So just really proud of the work he's done. And in fact, the Maryland Supreme Court constantly refers to his testimony as being the grounds for the success that we've enjoyed now at the Maryland Supreme Court. So when you talk about this being an international battle, all of us must play our part. So about 1 year ago, the Housing Opportunities Commission, which, as you know, provides provides housing for low and for middle and low income people, but they're really developers. Can I just give you a little secret here? They're really developers. And they brag about it behind closed doors. I mean, the thing that they do for the community is to make sure that is so that they don't lose their tax exempt status, right? But in fact, I mean, this as one of the executive director once said to me when he got very angry at me, we are the largest developers in Montgomery County. And I went, to me, that's, it's sort of obvious. So they decided that BACC was causing too much ruckus, too much noise, and they couldn't get about their business of being developers, finding what they call cheap properties and flipping them and kicking out poor people and that sort of thing. And so they decide, and they actually said that, because of our political activism, they decided to sell the cemetery.
Wait, I'm sorry, Marshall, hold on. There was a little bit of a leap in logic there that I need to make sure. So the property, the cemetery, not theirs, right?
Yes, it's theirs.
Oh, okay, it is theirs.
So the Housing Opportunities Commission actually owned the land where the cemetery is located.
So, but the BAC is advocating for the bodies in that cemetery to be left alone. And their answer is, you know what? We're just going to sell it. We're going to sell it. Not we're going to walk away from the table and leave it alone and let these, even if they never made a statement and even if they just said, you know what, we're just going to cut our losses because we're tired of fighting these people. No, they need to make their money regardless. Right. So their decision was to sell the land. To someone else.
And they were clear that this is a cemetery. And it was also clear that the developer who was going to buy the land, and it was interesting because there was a lot of corruption going on. A lot of the bids came in plus $1 over like $50 million. And then one bid was $50 million and $1. I mean, so there was a lot of stuff going on but even just the inside trading.
A lot of chicanery. That's my favorite.
I'm telling you. But anyway, they decide that they can't take our activism anymore around the cemetery. This is the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County. And so they're just going to wipe their hands of us by just selling the cemetery and getting rid of us. And so we found out quite by accident, like a day before they were going to accept this bid. I think it was $50 million or $60 million for Moses, for a portion of Moses Cemetery. And so we quickly contacted our lawyers, and we were actually able to get a temporary restraining order to prevent them from selling the land. And then that temporary restraining order was turned over into a permanent restraining order. At that point, they decide to go to the court, the appeals court, to see if they can overturn the judgment by Judge Carla Smith, who had imposed a temporary restraining order. And lo and behold, the appeal court grants their, sided with the Housing Opportunities Commission. That was a difficult day for us. And our lawyer said not to worry. We still have another appeal, which is to the Maryland Supreme Court. And so our attorneys, who are just absolutely brilliant attorneys, write amazing brief to the Maryland Supreme Court. Now, they only accept like 1 out of 20, it's some small number of cases that they accept to hear every year. And so we were prepared that they would come back and say, sorry, this issue is not going to be one of them. But, within, I think, about 2 months, they came back and said, yes, the Maryland Supreme Court will hear the case of the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition versus the Housing Opportunities Commission. And then it took a whole year before we got the decision. In fact, we received the decision on the last day of their session for the year.
Wow.
And we were on the phone with our attorneys. You think we're going to get a decision, and finally, the decision was released, and it was a decision that had 2 different parts to it. The first part of the decision, before I say this, I guess people just have to know this as background, and I'm watching the clock, so I'm not gonna, is that it was the Maryland Supreme Court in 1857 that heard the case of Dred Scott.
They said that in the
versus Stanford. No, I'm telling you.
Okay.
That it's the same court that heard the Dred Scott decision,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And it was the Chief Justice Taney who wrote, as you know, the opinion that Black people have no rights that whites are bound to respect. That comes out of the Maryland Supreme Court. So you can imagine, I mean, we're all historians. We understand that we're dealing with a court with this kind of history. And so so the decision is really into 2 unequal parts. There's a part of the court that is written by the majority that basically says, we don't want to talk about race. We don't want to admit that. We don't want to talk about a Black cemetery. We just want to talk about cemeteries in general. And they talk about, what the Germans have done with their cemetery, and all kinds of interesting, but completely, as far as I'm concerned, well, anyway. I don't
irrelevant. Irrelevant, yes.
but they never mention, for example, African jurisprudence around cemeteries. It's all about how the Europeans have considered cemeteries, right? And so they come up with the decision in the first part, and that is that, yes, we cannot find a reason to say that the Moses Cemetery should not be sold or cannot be sold. So that's one part of the decision, that yes, the cemetery can be sold. But then there are these 2 Black women on the court, and they make the most compelling and brilliant analysis of this decision. And I've got to call their names, Justices Watt and Justice Houghton. And these 2 Black women, please, if you're going to read any Maryland Supreme Court decision, you've got to read the dissents on this issue, because I think they pushed the court in another direction. They said, okay, well, if you're going to say that the cemetery can be sold, can we also say that the descendants of those buried have the right to take those people who are trying to buy their relatives and sue them for desecration? And so this order that we get from the Maryland Supreme Court says, on the one hand, yes, the cemetery can be sold. On the other hand, if someone decides to buy it, that is a toxic purchase. Because now we have given the descendant community the right to come before court and to sue whoever tries to buy this cemetery. So what that means is, yeah, if you want to spend $70 million knowing that the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition is about to take you to court, go ahead. If you have nothing better to do with your money, then please proceed, right?
Brilliant. I love it. It sounded like a defeat at first.
Yes.
But and I'm just gonna say this, Marcia, because we've been hearing this phrase, Black women are going to have to save democracy again, in a context that we are not comfortable with, currently. But I think in this case, the way you have described it, I think in this case we can absolutely say that Black women saved this cemetery.
Well,
That's what it
I
kind of
think,
sounds like.
well, I agree. I mean, it was two Black women. Look, Black women and Black men, we are in this fight together as far as I'm concerned, right? And so I'm not sort of uncomfortable with Black girl power and that kind of thing, because I think that that's a way of dividing Black men from Black women in many ways. I think that, we have needed each other to survive one of the most
Right.
vile political systems ever devised on the face of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, let the record show that there were two Black women who sat on the Maryland Supreme Court who came up with this, I think, this brilliant idea. And so what did our lawyers say? We are taking advantage of the law right now because we've got desecrators sitting on Moses Cemetery right now. And so, and as you heard our lawyers say, we're not giving any strategies away at this
That's
point.
right.
We're keeping our mouths closed.
Mm-hmm.
They will find out what our strategy is when the judge in the courtroom hears it at the very same time.
Mm-hmm.
They made the decision to desecrate what they knew was a cemetery. I think they were not expecting that the Maryland Supreme Court was going to go in this direction and then basically pour the power back into the descendant community.
Right.
And that's the way we see it, which is the reason why we call this a victory. This is a victory because we are going to use everything that this court has given us to fight for our liberation. And we're going, and that liberation includes our ancestors. And I just wanted, if I have one more minute, I just wanted to read how the Judge Watts, how she starts her dissent. She says, at a fundamental level, and she's quoting Michaela Devine, at a fundamental level, there's a privilege in a permanent marked grave, which implies that the deceased in some way deserves eternal remembrance. Black and Indigenous people in this country have systematically been deprived of this permanence. Their graves grazed and erased. That's how she starts her dissent. And when I saw that, I said, okay.
We might be all right.
We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. So we have now a very historic ruling in our favor. We're so grateful for WPFW. WPFW was with us every step of the way. In fact, so many members of our community, we filled up buses, cars to get to Annapolis. We not only filled up the courthouse, the courtroom itself, but the lobby and the overflow room. There was no way these judges didn't understand that this is an important issue to Black people. To people, should be to all people, but particularly to Black people, since these developers have decided that we're the most vulnerable and they're going to dig up our graves, and the Native American graves. So my hat off to WPFW, all their listeners, everyone who came out and supported us. This is about people power. This is about the community coming together, organizing, making this a priority in terms of saying, no, you're not going to dig up our relatives. You're not going to dig up people who fought so hard in life and then disgrace them when they can no longer fight for themselves. So yeah, I'm just incredibly proud of our community right now.
And Marsha, I am incredibly proud that I am anywhere in the same vicinity of you and your husband and the work that you all have done. I show people that picture of me and Abdus out there with you all that day.
Yes.
I show people that picture all the time because we were so incredibly proud to be, but not proud for ourselves. It was like, oh my God, we are a part of this enormous
Right.
move. And we
Mm,
didn't even know where the move would go, but we were
right.
just glad to be a part of it. And this is why I do what I do. This is
Yeah.
why I spend the time I do to talk to the people I do. And I'm glad the WPFW is here to give
Yeah.
us this platform to do
Yeah.
this. Marsha, where can people listen to your show? When can people hear you?
Yeah, my show is what's at stake.
Mhm.
I'm on the fourth Wednesday of each month. And I agree with you. I support WPFW with my whole heart and soul. I think it is the most important cultural institution in Washington, or in the Washington DMV, because it allows us to talk to millions of people at one time. I mean, we have a large email list, but it's nothing like WPFW's
Yeah.
outreach. And the fact that we have this platform where we can communicate with our community is incredibly important and special. So, so thank you so much for everything that you do, Jacqueline. I mean, we were just talking about Chairman O'Malley and the fight that he's putting up in Florida right now, which he will win this fight.
Yeah.
But it was WPFW that broke the story
Yes,
when
it
the
was.
FBI invaded his home and his office.
Mhm.
That's the kind of work that WPFW does. And I'm like you, I'm just so proud to be affiliated with WPFW.
And I'm really glad and really proud that you all have tuned in to Darker Than Blue for another Friday. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you all on YouTube, on Black Liberation Media who are watching. We appreciate you so much. Stay tuned for News Views with Garland Nixon. And as always, you all, a luta continua. The struggle continues, but I promise you, if you keep fighting, if you stay in the struggle, Victoria acerta, victory is certain. Thank you so much. Peace. All right, y'all. Thank you so very much for being on. Whoops, let me stop sharing that. Oh, it's so hard to get all the different things right. Thank you for being on. It's a little bit of a lag today because I've got some weird things going on with my tech here at the house. The internet's doing some weird things, but I really hope you enjoyed that interview. Um, I have been wanting to talk to Marsha about this continuing fight for a while, but I knew that there was a Supreme Court case that they were listening, that they were in the process of deciding. So I didn't want to bring her on before the case was decided, even though we didn't know when a decision was going to be made. So I was kind of watching them for announcements, and you heard her say it was a year. They were waiting for that decision for a year. So I've been holding off talking to Marsha about this for a year as things continue to happen. And I kind of resisted the temptation to bring her on when there really wasn't an update, because I really was hoping, like I knew that her husband had submitted testimony to the court and submitted his own lawsuit. And for us internationalists, that is fucking important. That is so fucking important to deal with this narrative that we have among some of our narrow nationalists, among our people who believe that appealing to Americanness is going to get them some reparations. Everybody else in the world, I think, who is a part of a diaspora that exists because of the transatlantic human trafficking crime, they understand that the struggle is connected, that they're all connected to everybody else who was just in a different place because that's where the boat took them, but they all came from the same place. The fact that this man from Africa, a Yoruba, sued the government of the United States for redress for his people being subjected to the transatlantic Holocaust. That is the international connection on the record right there. So this is why, if history wasn't enough, because obviously history is not enough for people who believe that only the descendants of people who were enslaved in this country deserve reparations. No, everyone who was subjected to that transatlantic human trafficking operation, everyone subjected to that deserves reparations from every single country that was involved. This is not a one country situation, because the operation couldn't have happened without massive collaboration between countries. Beginning, middle, end. Well, there hasn't been an end to it, has it? Because those countries are still in collaboration with each other to keep the descendants of those people oppressed and to deny their collusion in this history. That's why they don't want us to know this history. That's why you're not seeing a whole lot of this story broadcast on local news, and certainly not on national news, because they don't want everybody else to know how to fight these attacks that are happening all across the country. I see you all's comments asking about, what's the book they wrote about how they fought this? Is this the same thing as what's happening on Lincoln Cemetery? Is this the same thing about what's happening to a cemetery in another part of this country? Yeah, it's the same thing. And the reason you didn't hear about this story, or maybe we didn't hear about Lincoln Cemetery, or we don't know about the other cemeteries, is it because they're not covering these stories, because they do not want us to know that we can defeat them. And we can defeat them using the very system that they set up to produce the situation that we're fighting in the first place. I think it's wild that this decision came out of the same Supreme Court that the Dred Scott decision came from. And it was two Black women Maryland Supreme Court justices who said, oh, wait, hold up. Maybe the rest of y'all white dudes on here need a little history lesson in why we need to backpedal a little bit. And that's why I said this might be the one case. And I think Marsha kind of missed that I was talking about Kamala Harris in Black Girl Magic, but because I'm the host of the show, I can't say anything negative about presidential candidates. Yes, that's the rule that just came down from the FCC. So I cannot say negative things or critique any of the presidential candidates, but my guests can. So she kind of missed that I was talking about Kamala Harris, but that's okay. But because I know y'all picked it up via Black Brew, I know you did. But this is why I said that this might be the only case that I can think of where I'm like, all right, this is a legitimate use of Black Girl Magic. I can, yeah, I don't have a problem applying Black Girl Magic in a positive way to this case. So yeah, I am so excited about this. Yeah, we started interviewing Marsha about this on By Any Means Necessary. Oh man, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, we did the first interview with her, and Abdus and I did. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can find that picture. Hold on, because I want to show it to you. Because I look at that picture sometimes, of course, to see my honey, but also I look at that picture to see, like, man, we were just always in the shit. We were just always in the thick of things, and always in the thick of things together, and always pretty excited about it. And we loved that. We loved it. So let's see. I've got this picture here. So this was from 2019. And let me get the right one. Nope, not this one. Hold on. So while I look for this picture, so I am really excited about this victory for them. I am very interested to see how this victory is going to impact the other fights at the other cemeteries. I am very interested to see what is going to be the outcome of Marsha's husband filing the lawsuit in this case, and in effect winning, because if that lawsuit was like the key that pushed them to reconsider a part of their decision, then I think that's very, very impactful and important. And as I keep scrolling up looking for this picture, doggone it, to make sure I have it, um, I'm very interested to see, how much traction that's going to get, because I think that that can be connected to um, the um, what am I thinking about? I think that can be connected to the continued we charge genocide fight that we are engaged in, still engaged in charging the U.S. genocide through the United Nations. I think that is a part of that process, even though we've seen that the United Nations is basically useless in regard to responding to genocide. Obviously, everyone sees that now. With the way the United Nations just kind of isn't doing a whole lot to and really can't do a whole lot to end the genocide in Palestine, but it's very instructive to see that. But I am interested in seeing what they're going to do with that, if they're going to do anything with that testimony, if they're going to reference it, because obviously it's connected, right? Yeah. So, interesting, very interesting. Um, so one picture that I have, and this is not the one with me and Abdus in it, and I don't know why I don't have that picture on my whatchamacallits, but I'm going to show you. Oops, this one, there we go. So this was in 2018, and as you can see, there's our friend Marsha there, and there's her husband next to her. This gentleman here is the King Tofi the Third from Benin, I believe. This is his wife, I believe. And these are other people with his entourage, but this is in Bethesda. This is at Macedonia Baptist Church in Bethesda. The church is on the corner, and this is actually me. This little red, this little part of my dashiki, that's me. So there's another picture where you can see us, and then we kind of shifted people to be included in the picture with the king. But yeah, I'm not sure where the picture of me and Abdus and the king are. When I find it, I'll throw it up here for you. Yeah. So this has been for me. This has been just another one of those. Wow, this is a realization of the struggle that me and Abdus were involved in, and it's, man, this week has been like that. This week has really been like that, kind of connecting with the work that me and Abdus started together, and confirming that I am on the right path, still continuing with this work, and really confirming for me how important this work that we started together is to the people that we became involved with. Like, I couldn't walk away from this now if I wanted to, and I don't want to, but continuing to be connected with people who keep validating that what we did and what we do is important and it's valuable. It doesn't feed like a sense of importance or ego or anything. It gives me the confirmation spiritually that I need to know that I am on the right path, that I am doing the right thing, that not giving up and continuing to do this work is exactly what I was supposed to do after everything happened. Because this is where it was supposed to go. And it is supposed to go farther than this, whether I am involved in it or not. So this whole kind of week, I guess, being involved in this campaign with just all of it, all of this has been just this mad confirmation that yeah, this is the move. This is right. Abdus was on the right track. He was absolutely right. His instincts were correct. Um, his dreams were absolutely righteous and valid, and we made them come true. So I could not be prouder of what I'm seeing happen in so many different ways that we got involved in, that we had our hand in, that we touched in some way, and that touched us. So I'm gonna keep doing it. And as much as I can, I'm gonna keep doing it with Black Liberation Media. I'm gonna keep doing it. I'm not going anywhere. So I thank you all. Appreciate you. And I'm going to have a well-deserved beer now. I hope you all do too. Actually, I'm going to take my beer outside. I'm going to talk to the plants because the sunflowers have bloomed, and that's been really lovely. And I have a praying mantis on my cucumber plant. So me and the praying mantis are making friends. You want praying mantises in your garden. You also want ladybugs, and I have ladybugs. Um, and there are bees and dragonflies and all kinds of fun things. So I'm going to take my beer outside and I'm going to watch nature, and I'm going to harvest some ripe cucumbers and hopefully a tomato. And I'm going to have myself a delicious cucumber salad. If you don't know what cucumber salad is, you ain't Southern, and I can't help you. And I'm going to enjoy my Friday evening. Shout out to my comrades who are at Howard University right now: Black Alliance for Peace, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, All African People's Revolutionary Party, Pan African Community Action. Shout out to my comrades who are at Howard University at the Radical Students Organizers Organizations Fair right now, tabling and listening to these kids. We'll be back at Howard University for another event for prison reform and prison justice on September 20th. On October 27th, 25th through the 27th is the Black Alliance for Peace in-person general membership meeting, which will be here in Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is DC, almost, might as well be just 45 minutes away. And comrades that I have met while working on the Jill Stein campaign in the what we are calling the Red, Black, and Green road team for the Jill Stein campaign. These comrades that I've met through working with them have just become members of BACC, and they will be in Baltimore. And they are some badass brothers from these street tribes. For those of you who don't understand what street tribes are, they are the former gangs from Chicago, Milwaukee, the Midwest area, like the Gangster Disciples, who are now called Growth and Development. You cannot call them Gangster Disciples anymore. I'm just using that name for reference. The Young Lords, the P-Stones, who are now called the Moes. Yeah, those brothers. Yeah. No, don't get Ricky involved in this fight, Yipper. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't get me and Ricky going at each other in these streets. You know there is a Baltimore DC beef that I'm trying to heal. No. But it's for organizing purposes. As long we are one big family, even if we do face some different kind of challenges in these regions. And we are supporting each other back and forth because we are one family. Tomorrow, even though I couldn't go to Howard tonight, I know that a couple of comrades from Baltimore are at Howard University tomorrow. Most of us from DC are going up to Baltimore for our end of summer social. Yes, we have socials because we have to, because we do a lot of work and we need to relax. And organizers are usually very bad at relaxing. So we decided we would organize our relaxation because that way we make sure everybody gets a chance to just chill. So we organize socials to make sure that we just get together and enjoy ourselves, get to know each other and build community. Because you can't organize if you're not in a community, if you don't know how to build community, if you don't want to build a community. If you don't want to build a community, you shouldn't be organizing. because that's really what organizing is building a community. So that's what we do. And this is the organizing stuff. There is the Jill Stein campaign stuff. We're planning a prison justice webinar sponsored by the campaign to bring together people to talk about why we need prison justice, not reform, justice. And people who are involved in that red, black, and green road team who did time. One brother that we met who just joined BACC did 18 years. Another brother who is a minister in the former Peace Stones, he did time. These are people who all know some of the political prisoners that we advocate for through CurbFest. Like they know Larry Hoover. Larry Hoover is their elder. Larry Hoover is on that list of political prisoners from the Jericho Crow movement that we use for CurbFest. Like Chief Malik, he is their chief. They talk to him all the time. Imam Jameen, Imam Alameen, Jamil Alameen, he's their elder too. They know these men directly, that they are like literally their direct leadership behind the walls. A lot of these brothers don't make moves to this day unless they get the approval from Chief Malik, from Larry Hoover, from Imam Jamil Alameen. They did not meet with us until they got approval from their elders from behind the walls to meet with us and build with us. Do you understand? That is how tight these people are with these brothers behind the walls. And they know more people behind the walls who can organize their people from behind the walls, not only for the Jill Stein campaign. I mean, if we can get her elected, that's fantastic. And you know, believe it or not, I actually think it's possible. If we do enough organizing, hey, look, stranger things have happened. I rule out nothing. I rule out nothing. But even if we don't get her elected, because honestly, the only reason I think voting is good, and maybe I'm going to save this, I think, I'm going to do a little conversation about third-party voting in this election in particular, and why I'm willing to give it one more shot. Why I'm working on this Jill Stein campaign in this election, because I'm willing to give the ballot one more shot before we start considering the bullet. Because isn't that what Malcolm X told us? It's either the ballot or the bullet. And I think this election is the last time that we might be able to consider the ballot. Maybe this one and maybe the next one. Because after that, I don't think there's going to be much left of this society to have an election. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna do my outline. I'm gonna do it right. And I'm gonna do that for a special Patreon show for Black Liberation Media this week. So look out for that, because I think we need to talk about that. Because I'm transparent. I'm not gonna hide, what I'm doing, and I'm not gonna be like, oh, I don't want people to criticize me. Say what you want. But I think it is important, if we're talking about building dual power and seizing political power. Well, how do we do that? And if we have an apparatus that exists, then it has its problems. Yes, the Green Party got some issues. But if we have an infrastructure there where we might be able to use it in some way to pursue and achieve some of that political power on whatever scale that we can, then why not? Why not? If we see what somebody else did or didn't do when they had use of that apparatus, and we see how they squandered the opportunity, and we know that something better could have been done with that, when I'm presented with, and I'm the chief person who was criticizing the moves by the person to abandon the infrastructure. So when me, the chief person who criticized it, is presented with an opportunity to, okay, put your money where your mouth is then. What would I have looked like to be like, oh no, I'm not, no, it's not, I'm not that's not, no, no. When it was presented to me, like, well, you know what? I think you can speak better to some of these issues than did. And as much as I was like, oh, I did not want to get involved in electoral politics, and I kind of thought, well, I mean, if I don't like what was done, and I have an opportunity to do something different that might benefit us in some way, if I can have a hand in doing that, okay, why not? Why not? So I did. So look out for that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And I think that's going to be pretty entertaining. So, all right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you very much. I do not know where I'm going to be next week. That's the thing about working on an electoral campaign. If you're on the road team, you don't know where you're going to be half the time. So I know I'm going to have a couple of days at home this weekend. I don't know where I'm going to be next week. I'll let you know. And until then, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. A luta continua. As always, the struggle continues, but keep on fighting, keep on going. Do not give up no matter what happens, because if we keep fighting, I promise, Victoria Asserta, victory really is certain. All right, y'all. Peace.